So, there's no downplaying it whenever like an athlete incurs a traumatic physical injury. It's gonna hurt them in some way, but you can't let it completely consume you and insert doubt into your mind and in your life. And I think that learning process of how to deal with a traumatic injury or even multiple can help strengthen a person's mind and body overall.
Mr. Jordan Rosa right there. My good buddy, college roommate, and a true physical specimen. Jordan was a stud wrestler. He competed in Pennsylvania, one of the meccas of high school wrestling. And in this talk, we talk about his injuries at the end of his career in high school, which came at an unfortunate point when he was getting ready to compete for a championship, and also the injuries he had later in college, which kept him from competing at Virginia Tech, which is where we met. We talk about how those physical injuries really played out mentally and how he shifted his identity. We also talk about physicality and how it translates through all things in life, and how physicality is not something that we just practice on the mat or in the weight room, but is something that goes throughout our lives. And we talk about the ability to turn that switch and go from full relaxation to full output workout mode, and how to really, really turn on something that Jordan is exceptionally good at as a wrestler, and again, as a true physical specimen. So I hope you enjoy this talk with Mr. Jordan Rosa. Howdy, brother. Hope you're doing good. We just had a pretty good day here. Me and Ian got to go spearfish. Got a little flounder, a little fella, but we made some good tacos, tasty tacos. Yeah, so the first thing that I'm wondering about is that you, in my eyes, are one of the most in your body, embodied people I know. And I'm curious where you think that comes from. It seems like, whether it's actually an athletic sport or ping pong or just grooving on the dance floor, you're in it, and you're as smooth as can be. And I'm not trying to blow smoke at you, but I'm wondering where you think that comes from. Is it something you actively aim for, or do you think it's a product of growing up with a really athletic lifestyle or wrestling mindset? Curious where you think it comes from.
My dude, I just want to say first, thank you for thinking about me for this. It's really cool. I miss you, and I hope all is well. With that being said, in terms of the body movement and control and overall ability to be aware and within myself, I think everyone is gifted something at birth, whether it be super intelligence or intelligence, looks, height, athleticism, savviness. And I think one of my natural gifts was a heightened level of body awareness and overall athleticism that's allowed me to excel in sports from a young age. I understood when I was a young kid that I could do different things. I could, was able to, get on the wrestling mat and immediately start doing well. And I think that's at least the origin or the base of how I've gotten to where I am today. I think also, of course, repetition, and the art of competing and sharpening those skills, fine-tuning them, learning more about your craft and your skill has, over the years, completely changed the way that I do things in terms of from one, a wrestling standpoint, and two, just how I understand my body and myself. So I think the competition and the repetition has driven and allowed for growth in and itself. And also, there's one other thing that I think has helped me in terms of just overall understanding of myself as a person, and whether that be through meditation or through different types of experiences I've allowed to share with, whether it be by myself or with friends. I think some of these experiences have allowed me to kind of self-reflect and understand myself at an even higher level that, in turn allows me to control myself and understand how my body works and how it moves. And I think that is, another big factor in how, I've become who I am today. So I think all those things combined have really contributed in a sense.
All right. And the next thing that I was wondering about is if there are any key lessons or sort of philosophies or mindsets that you've taken from the wrestling world and have applied or still apply to your life, especially since your life now, you are a very intellectual dude working as a lawyer. I'm curious if you have seen a translation of the principles of wrestling into this world, which seems very different, but maybe it's not.
This next question I can relate very closely to. I think the number one lesson or mindset that I can give to somebody would be never doubt yourself. Always have faith in yourself, your abilities, and never think some goal is too big to achieve. As a sophomore, I had all the physical and athletic capabilities, I could at that age, and I think I could excel at a super high level, but I had a mind block. I would go up, I'd see a bracket, I'd see someone's name, someone ranked higher than me. I'm like, oh crap, like I'm done. Like I can't beat that person. I can't beat these people. They're just way out of my league. And I just can't do it. And I would, I'd get inside my own head, and a lot of times I would sabotage my own performance, and it really hinder me and hinder my growth and the ability to excel. I think finally, as a junior, I started training with a former professional boxer, Kermit Cintron, and he allowed me to kind of break free from that mind block and just gave me all the confidence I needed to just start just going and just ripping it and just trusting myself and doing everything I could to, just believe in myself. So I think, self-doubt in yourself, it can really cause you to question your abilities. And I think just having faith in yourself overall and never doubting the goal is a big thing to trust.
Another thing I always noticed about you was your ability to kind of switch between extremes and to either be full on cozy mode or full on workout, going as hard as you can mode. And I'm curious how you developed that like really fine-tuned on-off switch, where that comes from. And I'm curious if you think that's an important part of physicality and movement.
Of course, man, you got to build that trigger. I kind of became more aware of that after reading the Waitzkin book, The Art of Learning, and I guess it kind of showed me that I did have a trigger and allowed me to refine it a little bit more. I think it's done over practice, and you kind of almost like retrofit it back, and you kind of build it from that point of turning the switch, and you kind of learn how to build up to it and learn how to turn it on, and allows you to kind of jump into that super hyper focused mode that allows for the highest level of performance. And I think it is definitely an important part of it. I think the ability to do that, doesn't allow you to waste any energy or waste any time on things that aren't necessary in terms of leading up to that point of focus that you need to be into. So I think it's definitely an important part. I don't know if it's been the most important part of my understanding of how movement works and how I compete, but I would definitely say that's definitely important.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you about was your injuries. And I know these are really at least from the outside, seemed like very intense experiences, so I'd understand if you didn't want to talk about them. But I'm just curious how those experiences were for you mentally, because it seems to me, for someone who's put so much love and hard work and intensity into a craft and then had that kind of essentially taken away from them, I would imagine it would be super hard identity-wise. And so I was curious how that transition in your identity was for you, and if there were things that helped you to move through that. And then I'm wondering how you look back on that time now, and whether you think there are lessons there that you benefit from now, regardless of how bad it sucked or what it was actually like.
Of course, the injuries were undoubtedly they sucked. They were horrible. There's no other way to put it. I still hold to this day that the injury senior year of high school was the worst day I've ever had in my life. I mean, that is in some ways a blessing, because in hindsight, it's not the worst thing that could happen to a person, or I've never had to go through anything more traumatic than that in a sense. So to that, it's okay, but it was horrible. I watched a life. I mean, at this point, it was 18 years, but still a lifelong goal of mine disappear in the blink of a second, in terms of wanting to win a state championship in Pennsylvania for wrestling. And fortunately, I was able to go to Virginia Tech and still be allowed the ability to compete with the guys on the team, albeit hindered to the point where I needed to get surgery later on. And then again, to go back as a junior and tear my ACL and just watch everything completely disappear was even more difficult. And it definitely hurt me just as much mentally and emotionally as it did physically. I remember just completely breaking down after this, well, both of them, but after the second one, and realizing that wrestling was pretty much done for me on that type of competitive level, because I was somewhat burnt out after that. All the strain on the body and the weight cutting was a lot, and it was really tough to swallow and really, really difficult to deal with. But I think I credit my dad with always giving me sound advice, and as much as I don't always believe that everything happens for a reason to some extent, I do believe that this had a positive effect on my life overall. I realized that I needed to focus on another one of my goals, which was excelling in the classroom, and I always had an interest in law school, and it allowed me to use that injury as a motivational stepping stone to push myself in a different level, and allowed me to work hard and do well on my LSATs and get into law school, where I'm furthering my career and my life. And it allowed me to get to Villanova and meet my wonderful girlfriend. Shout out to Alex. And it's allowed me to grow as a person and understand that adversity is something that can be overcome, and in turn makes you a stronger person overall.
Thanks again to Jordan for sharing some of his hard-won wisdom with us. If you want to see an awesome video of Jordan wrestling back in the day, I'll put a link down in the notes underneath the video. Definitely worth a watch. It'll get you sufficiently amped up. I think it's an interesting thing, like how there's certain people in your life that are very important to you and have a very big impact on you, but you may never express it because you never really have the words. But I think Jordan, to me, represented something with movement and physicality that I had never seen before I had met him. And I think I'll struggle to put words to it here, but I think it was this sort of overarching mindset and philosophy that he seemed to carry through his life. And it was the first time I saw somebody who was, an athlete, no doubt, and within the gym or on the field, you sensed his athleticism. You saw it in action, but there was no boundary between that and the smoothness and the attention that he brought to the rest of his life. And I found that very appealing because I always felt like there shouldn't be a boundary. And so to see someone whose physical practice, mainly being wrestling, had taught him so much and gave him so much value, that he was able to use those same principles throughout the rest of his life, that made grappling super appealing to me for the first time. And I really think I never intentionally came to this realization then, but I do think, looking back, that meeting Jordan was sort of the origin point of me getting interested in jiu-jitsu, which has become a super interesting experience and hobby of mine over the past 3 or so years. And when I was getting into jiu-jitsu, I started reading the book that Jordan mentions there by Josh Waitzkin, The Art of Learning. And Josh Waitzkin was originally you could call him a chess prodigy. He was super successful in chess tournaments from a very young age. Kind of rose to the top of that sport, got disenchanted, left, and took up martial arts, originally with Tai Chi, but eventually branching into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and ended up being one of the first black belts under Marcelo Garcia. And Josh wrote this book about the learning process, which he found to be consistent. He found certain consistencies between learning in chess and learning in martial arts, which are, seemingly completely different things. And so this book is a great tool for how to sort of like really optimize the learning process and be intentional about the learning process, rather than having a scattershot approach. A lot of cool ideas in there, and one of them that Jordan talked about was this idea of building your trigger, which is basically coming up with these rituals which you do before you enter into competition or into a workout or into focused deep work. And basically you're building this routine which precedes your most heightened state, your most performative state. And sort of like the Pavlovian dog thing, you build this association between the ritual and that heightened state, and eventually you can shorten that ritual further and further. So if you were to create a ritual of having a coffee, stretching a little bit, and hearing a little song, eventually, that might take you 10 minutes before you get into your zone. But eventually the idea would be to literally just hear the words in your head of your favorite, of that song, to maybe do, one quick stretch or a deep breath, and to just think about the taste of coffee, and you'd be right in it. It's building that super fine trigger to put you in that state when you need it. And the ability to be fully at rest right before that moment where you switch into the zone. And as I had said before, Jordan is particularly good at that quality, which I think is important here in the West, where we tend to be at 50% all day, all long, fully caffeinated throughout the day, but never really giving our full attention to anything because we've been trying to go and go and go, and never have given ourselves moments to rest and recover before we go again. So I think there's a lot of value in being able to switch between the extremes. All right. Thanks again for tuning in. Over and out.